Good afternoon, everyone. We want to thank you for taking time to join us today while we all navigate this unprecedented time in our country and really the world. Today's FTD University webinar is titled Social Media and Your Digital Presence in a Crisis. Social media expert Krista Neher, CEO of Bootcamp Digital, will show you how to make strategic and relevant posts as well as marketing strategies that can connect with consumers now. You'll also discover tips to optimize your online presence to communicate clearly with your customers. Krista is a trainer, educator, global speaker, and best-selling author, as well as a social media and digital marketing pioneer. She has over 15 years of branding and marketing experience, working with companies such as Procter & Gamble, GE, Verizon, General Mills, Nike, Macy's, and Google, just to name a few. Additionally, Krista has been a featured expert on CNN, NBC, CBS, The Wall Street Journal, The New York Times, and Shape magazine. Once Krista is finished with her presentation, we will open up the webinar for questions. If you have a question, simply type it in that question box on the upper right side of your screen. Feel free to submit your questions during the presentation. So without further ado, I'd like to turn things over to Krista to begin the webinar. Krista?
Excellent. Hello, and thank you so much for having me today. And thank you all for taking time out to join, because certainly all of us have a lot going on in this uncertain time. And my goal today is to give you some ideas, inspiration, and practical advice of things that you actually can do and control that potentially can impact your business and your business results. So you already heard about me. I won't go into more detail, but I've written a number of books on social media. It's something I'm very passionate about, and I'm excited to talk to you about this today. The other thing you should know is I'm Canadian, but I'm actually coming to you live from the Netherlands. I've lived in Amsterdam the last few years, and so we have lots of flowers over here, as you probably know. I run a company called Bootcamp Digital, and we focus on helping businesses to grow their digital capabilities and grow their results. And so here's what I want to cover with you today. One is to think a little bit about the competitive advantage that you already have available to you. The second thing is to look at some of the messages that can connect now. And I'm really excited because I think there's some really powerful and positive messages here. The third thing I want to cover is some safety messaging that you can use, how to spread your messages, and then a few tips that you can use to stay ahead of the curve. So before we dive in, one of the things that I wanted to touch on is maybe the elephant in the room, which is what if I'm closed? I don't know how many of you are in the position where you're already closed. Maybe we can do a quick show of hands in the GoToWebinar app. If you're in the app joining us, you see the little raise hands button. If you're already closed, if you could raise your hand. And Janet, I'm going to ask if you could let me know, around what % of people are raising their hands saying they're already closed, because I can't see it at my control panel. But raise your hand if you're already closed. Janet, if you could pop in, if you don't mind me giving you a little job, and just let me know how many of you are in that position. But if you're already closed, what I would encourage you to do is, there's a lot that you can't control, but the good thing about social media and digital marketing is when cash flow is a concern, when business is a concern, one of the things that you can do is look to on I got a message my audio dropped. Is that still the case, or can you hear me now? If it, I'm back. Okay, sorry
We
about
can hear
that.
you, yes, now.
I'm sure everyone is using the internet right now, so that certainly doesn't help. But Janet had said about 25% of people are closed, right? And so the things that I'm going to talk about today don't cost money. They take some time and energy, of course. And so, maybe this is something that you can think about in that perspective as well for about the 25% of you who are already closed. So one is continue to build top of mind awareness. So none of us know what the future will hold and how long things will take to return to normal, whatever that looks like anymore, but we don't know what the future holds. So, continue to focus on the positive things that you can do. So one is build top of mind awareness. And, the key to success in marketing, especially small businesses like a florist, so much of it is top of mind awareness, right? So if somebody says, hey, Krista, I need to get these clothes dry cleaned. There's one dry cleaner that's the top of my mind. It's probably one that I pass a lot or I see their posts somewhere. And the same is true with a florist. These local businesses that are need-oriented, oftentimes it's that top-of-mind awareness. So you want to continue to post in order to build top-of-mind awareness so that people think of you first when they need flowers. The second thing is you can use it as an opportunity to spread positivity. And I'm going to show you some examples of posts, but really, flowers and the celebration and the feeling that you get from flowers is really a positive thing. And surely that's something all of us could use more of right now. So it's kind of a unique angle that you have at your disposal in order to continue to connect with people. The other thing I'll say is all of the things we're going to talk about in terms of communication and your digital presence, all of that still applies. So definitely continue to think about that. And then the last thing I'll say is maybe think about ways that people can still support you while you're closed. One of the things that I have found to be incredibly powerful in general in this time is the number of people stepping up and interested in trying to help other people, including businesses that need that help. So if there's other ways that people can support you, certainly think about that and how you can incorporate or include that into your messaging as well. So with that, let's dive in and start looking at some of the things that you can do. Before we do that, I wanted to draw your attention to some resources that can really help you. The first is on the FTD site. It's at ftdi.com/COVID-19. And you'll see here they actually have an assistance program for florists that was just announced. And other details below. So check this out. But if you scroll down further, they actually have a bunch of sample posts for social media. And I'll show you some of those posts, but this is a great sort of copy and paste opportunity where there's already existing posts that you can just quickly use if you maybe don't have the time or capacity. There's also links as well as the CDC guidelines, which obviously are important as well. Another resource for you is at SAF. So if you go, I have the URL here as well, and you can of course download this presentation. So if you don't get the links written down exactly right, download the presentation and you can grab them from there. But the link to this is actually also on the FTD website as well. But they have a toolkit resources and they have sample messaging about how to talk about your safe handling practices and things like that. So these are both great resources that you can use for kind of ready-to-go content. And what I always recommend with any ready-to-go content is usually it's an amazing starting point, and then you can kind of customize it to fit the look and feel of your specific brand in a way that's relevant to you. So let's talk a little bit about your competitive advantage, which maybe it doesn't feel like you have right now, but your competitive advantage is a few things. So one, marketing matters the most right now. Whenever a crisis of any sort hits, a lot of businesses immediately shut down their marketing, either because they're busy, they're a little bit paralyzed by the uncertainty, or a lot of big companies will freeze their budgets right away. And so what that means is that marketing matters more right now, and it's a really golden opportunity for the right type of messaging to really break through, especially on social media. A friend of mine who specializes in Facebook ads recently posted that they're seeing about 30% lower costs because so many different types of businesses have paused their advertising. So even if you're not doing paid advertising, I'm sure a strategy telling you to spend a bunch of money would not land very well right now, which is not what I'm going to talk to you about. But I'm not saying go out and run Facebook ads. What I'm saying is that marketing really matters right now because it's actually a little bit less cluttered and there's a little bit less noise in the system. So it's a great opportunity to really put your head down, think about that golden opportunity you have, and figure out what kind of marketing and messaging can work for you. even if you're closed down, you still can be thinking about, how do I stay relevant to people? What is the future messaging? And, something I also see a lot with social media is that we all have the best intentions, but it gets ahead of us and we have a hard time doing a great job consistently. This could also be a good opportunity to sit down and really think about your strategy and schedule out some great strategic posts going forward, or record those great videos you've always thought about and get those scheduled out for the rest of the year. So marketing really matters now. Even if you're closed, don't view that as, well, I need to say nothing, because what you want to do is hit the ground running as soon as you're given that opportunity. So use the time strategically, and I'll talk about some messaging that really works. The second big opportunity is you're already in the delivery business. So tons of businesses, you look at restaurants, they all have to figure out, okay, shoot, what do we do to get food to people who can't come in? You're already in that business. So you have a really good opportunity here to hit the ground running. And the key to success is to really let people know that you're safe and you're delivering, if you are delivering. If you're not delivering, you want to let them know you're safe and here's what we can do in the future. And so I'm going to talk to you specifically about some examples of content that can work well. So there are, now I'm trying to count these on the fly, 7 communication points that I would suggest you think about with respect to your messaging at this point. So the first thing is that flowers are a sign of connection. With everyone being at home and most people isolated in some sense, they are lacking that connection to human beings, right? And flowers are a beautiful way to connect with somebody even when you can't be there. So the connection element can be a great angle to your posts. The second thing is, we know that flowers make people happier. And this is a time when people are probably not feeling totally their happiest. So that's a unique angle, is deliver happiness, bring happiness to people. The third thing is, flowers are shown to reduce stress. There's a Harvard study, I'm sure you all know about this, but there's a Harvard study that shows a lot of the data points behind this, but flowers actually reduce stress, which people can certainly use right now. They make you more energetic. There's obviously the wellness benefits of surrounding yourself with things that make you feel happy. So that kind of wellness angle, delivering joy. Couldn't we all use a beautiful surprise showing up at our door to brighten our day? And then the last one is beautify your space. You're spending more time inside than ever before. Why not make it beautiful? And to be honest with you, I personally, I love having flowers in my house. And after I put this together, I literally went to the store and bought new flowers for my dining room table, because I'm like, yeah, first, I always love having flowers. They make me feel happy. But this really hits home on some of those positive benefits. So as you think about your messaging and communication strategy, these are really good, relevant points right now. So to me, what I think, it's always about creating or finding that silver lining a little bit. And I think that the silver lining here is really powerful in the sense that you have communication points that are incredibly salient and relevant right now. So all of these things are extraordinarily relevant to people right now. So think about these sort of themes in your posts. And I'm going to show you some examples. One is, this is maybe a little bit off, but this is a direct message. I would put this in the category of direct messaging. And this was sent from a New York City florist, right? And they use the hashtag #SendHappy, which I think is pretty nice. But you can see here, in this uncertain time, we're all feeling a bit isolated. We wanted to provide a way to connect and send a free bouquet to someone in Manhattan who needs a little extra joy. And if you look at this post, it got 847 likes and tons of comments. So it's playing off these themes that we've talked about, right? Happiness, people are uncertain and isolated, so why not send joy? In this case, they're offering to send something for free, but you don't have to choose that messaging. I think what's interesting is it feels like a really personal and direct message, and it touches on these benefits that we've talked about, and that's breaking through the noise and giving people some positivity and hope. Another example, brighter days are coming. We're all in this together. #SendHappy. So it's kind of like a nice positive message, a beautiful image as a way to connect with people. This is another interesting one, something to counteract the Monday blues inspired by the moon, blah, 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 blah. send happy spring arrivals. So again, it's all about sending happiness, and they're really thinking about what is it that we can use as a positive message track to really get people on board and interested. And all of these posts are still resonating well, even in the time we live in. And you think this is a New York florist where they're on a pretty strict lockdown. So definitely you can see that it's getting some traction and people are still interested in this content. So it's a really great opportunity to build that positivity that I talked about around some of those message tracks. I thought this was kind of a really nice post. So this came from an influencer that they work with. So this was posted by an influencer, but if you read this post, what I love about it is, so it's showing flowers in someone's home, which we're all spending more times in our homes than ever before. She looks super happy and thrilled. So it's obviously well framed, but it's like, send flowers. We wait for the perfect time, but what if that never comes? We wait for nothing. It's, you read this storytelling
All right, it looks like Krista's frozen for a minute. Hang on just for a minute. Technical difficulties, everyone.
like I am back. Sorry
You are
about
back.
that. Excellent. I think with everyone being online, it certainly is not helping my connection here. Um, so so what I was saying about this is, this is coming from an influencer that they partner with. But if you think of the message track, it's so powerful. And what I love is the storytelling, right? Why not send someone flowers just because today is a day, right? And maybe, you can have a nice whole storytelling element around where, people, if you are open and you can still deliver flowers, right? People could tell you who they would send free flowers to and why, and you choose a person and you surprise them, and then you ask them to share the story of how they made their day, right? Because that's what this is all about. And I think a lot of people have that sort of emotional connection, and this is the perfect time. And the storytelling element that you see in this, to me, really tells it beautifully. So I think that's something else to definitely think about. Now, I had mentioned at the outset that FTD on that specific microsite or that specific URL, they have social media posts that you can just take that have a lot of these messages built in. When you can't connect in person, say more with flowers. So there's a number of images that are ready to go that you can use there, again, with that same sort of positivity. Flower more, worry less. Also very on track with the themes for today. So these are also just samples of the content available from FTD on that site. And again, it's all about that positivity and really thinking about storytelling and building those emotional connections around positivity and the positive benefits, because that's what's resonating with people right now. Another opportunity is to look for what I would call magic moments. So what are some opportunities of magic moments that you could work with? And some of them might be a struggle right now, but one is virtual birthday parties. So we actually just had a virtual birthday party for my niece. It was her first birthday. And so no one could be there. So it was a virtual party on Google Hangouts. And interestingly, I was talking to my mom this morning as I was kind of preparing for this webinar a little bit. And I had said, imagine if somebody had sent them flowers for her birthday. Like what a nice way to just make their day with a small little gift for a virtual birthday party because you can't be there. Same with anniversaries, things like that. So there's still events that are now being celebrated virtually, but that doesn't mean you can't send a physical thing that can brighten someone's day. If someone's struggling, great way to cheer them up. Retirement homes. Now, I know this is tricky because a lot of hospitals and retirement homes are not allowing people in or are not allowing flowers in. But if they allow delivery, or maybe people can place orders for the future, Another opportunity would be if there are a handful of retirement homes that you regularly deliver to, maybe it's an opportunity to call them up, let them know your safe handling practices, see what would it take in order for you to be able to do those deliveries. And then maybe that's also a unique opportunity where you have a specific relationship that gets you in the door. So, thinking a little bit creatively of some of the ways you can get in front of people. If you can't send flowers to somebody in the hospital, have them waiting for them when they get home. And again, a nice storytelling post with an image. These are great ways to tell these stories and to make that emotional connection. Brighten someone's day, looking for that silver lining. So think about any sort of magic moments that you can celebrate with people. So this is actually in, I'm not even sure what language now. I sound embarrassing. I assume it was Chinese, but I don't actually know. But this is in another language, but presumably it's a note saying something, right? And so if you think of the concept of these magic moments, maybe it says in the note, happy birthday, sorry I can't be there in person. And that's getting the message across through an image, right? The message is, you see it's in front of a home. So you can see already the flowers are going to somebody's home. And then the message is what you want to say. So some of it is maybe also orchestrating, right? Show the flowers sitting on a doorstep. Can't be there in person. You can still brighten someone's day. Do you know someone who needs it? So, you hear often that a picture's worth 1,000 words. To me, even though I don't know the words, this is a strategic image because hopefully it's not actually saying something offensive. But this is a really strategic image because you can clip on the note that sort of sends the message you want to send, and you're showing the flowers in context. It's a nice, easy way to sort of get a point across. Another great example, right? The idea of sending some flowers to somebody's birthday, we can still deliver, etc. So, even though you can't be there, maybe a great way to send flowers to somebody. And so you can kind of think about it in that context and showing pictures. Same thing. I just received the most beautiful bouquet. Thank you, blah, blah, blah. You can also be telling these types of stories, especially if you have any images that you can use to support them. So think of the positivity and the opportunity there. Also, flowers, believe it or not, are even in the news, right? Alabama woman donates flowers when her wedding is postponed. I know a lot of people have been looking at ways to do good with the things that they can't use. And that can be another opportunity to consider. I mentioned I'm living in the Netherlands. Apparently they're burning flowers here. I didn't actually know that. The news story I heard here is what they say is they're donating them to hospitals, and they're actually giving them to the hospital workers. So they're giving them to healthcare workers. They're also giving them to sick people in the hospitals, and they're giving them to retirement homes. But healthcare workers, that could be another great angle of, hey, we have all these bouquets. We're going to donate them to healthcare workers who can pick them up on their way home. So, some of it is creativity and thinking about what you can do. Mother's Day is also coming up. And so, excuse me, being proactive about, we'll talk next about safety measures, but being proactive about, here's what we're doing, here's the guidelines, here's how we're following them, here's what the risk really looks like, and guess what? You can still send flowers on Mother's Day if you can, right? So great, great, great opportunity there. If you're closed and you're not able to send flowers, maybe you also, it sounds counterintuitive, but maybe you also could be a resource, right? If somebody always has a standing order with you on Mother's Day, I'm sure I own a business. Like, I get it. It's heartbreaking to lose that business and not fulfill the order, but maybe you can send them a list of other things that they could do instead. And then you're building that goodwill that could earn you a super loyal customer for life. So even if you can't do things in the immediate time, what can you do that's building positivity and building relationships that will come in handy and will be important going forward? The other key thing to keep in mind with your message track is obviously safety. Everybody's thinking about that, whether it's getting food delivered to their house, even the grocery store. Some people are saying, do I need to wash all the cans when I bring them in my house? So everyone's thinking about that. So let people know what you're doing. This is a perfect opportunity for proactive communication. Think about using words like touchless, contactless, no contact, curbside, home delivery, things that are signaling that, people's germy hands are not all over these things. and let people know specifically what it is that you're doing so that they can feel comfortable and confident. So you may not want to go into exactly what you're doing on every post, right? Because it could become pretty intense, but definitely make sure that you have that somewhere on your website or in a blog post so people feel more confident and safe, because in any time of uncertainty, giving people reassurance is absolutely vital. And so this kind of messaging can come in handy. I thought this was an interesting example from Dubai, and they do home delivery. This is in Arabic, which I can identify by looking at it. So this is a florist that is doing home delivery, and what you see, I have mixed feelings because the gloves feel a little intense, but actually I thought, man, they have the bottle of soap sitting in the background, the box of gloves, and the person holding the flowers is wearing gloves. So you also don't need to say, oh, we have safe handling. Maybe it doesn't need to be a buzzkill or seem so intense, but you can also visually signal these things in your imagery, so that people feel like, yeah, there's safe handling going on. And so again, a picture's worth 1,000 words. This picture tells you a lot about safety and safe handling without actually having all those words in it. Your local flower shop can still make a delivery or offer curbside pickup. And this is from the FTD Resource Center. So this is something you can just download and be ready to use right away, or you can customize it yourself. Probably you'd want to put your logo in it and say, you can still make a delivery or offer curbside pickup. But definitely let people know about that type of messaging so that they understand exactly what's going on. What you really want to do is over-communicate and update everything. So think about your main touch points with your customers, update everything, and try to be as proactive as possible in your updates. So what you don't want to do is, let's say your Google local business listing, you don't want to just leave it up and say, well, it still has our hours. People will assume that we're still open. They will not. They absolutely will not assume anything. So over-communicate. Let people know you're still delivering, your safety messaging, anything else that's important. Maybe you're even updating some of your images, but update all of your digital assets so that people know exactly what's going on. So what digital assets should you be thinking of? Update your website, update your Google business listing, Yelp. You can send an email, although probably everyone's already done that. I know I've gotten emails from every business I didn't know had my email. Even on your storefront, you could put a sign. Some of your bigger customers, call them proactively and talk about the plan, because people will really appreciate that right now, that they don't have to go chasing after you. You're taking the lead. You're letting them know the situation. And that is a great way to make sure that they understand exactly what is going on right now. So you can see, for example, on websites, yes, we are designing flowers and delivering safe, no contact delivery every day. Same language down here. Yes, we are designing and delivering safe, no contact delivery or curbside pickup. And you even could have a link that says, like, view our safety standards if you think that people are really that concerned. But over communicate, because people will assume you're closed. People are probably not sure if they can get flower delivery and if it's safe. So definitely it's something that's helpful to tell people. So my closing tips for you. So I'm going to just go through these few tips, and as I'm wrapping up, if you do have any questions, please type them in now, and then we'll answer all of your questions. So if you have questions, type them in, and we can get to those. But a few tips. One, be as proactive as possible. And so to me, what proactive means is, one, let people know up front, be overly clear in your communication, communicate everywhere. Secondly, think about where there could be opportunities and proactively follow up on those and chase those down. Two, stay positive in your messaging. Flowers are inherently a positive thing. And, sometimes it can seem like negativity is all around us, but stay positive in your messaging, and, think of the source of positivity that flowers bring. And the last thing I'll say is, like, a lot of the times when things go wrong, all of us, we're all human, right? And, we're scared about the future. We don't know what's going to happen. There's a lot of uncertainty, and, a lot of livelihoods are at stake. I get that all. But it's not the time to sit back and wait to see what happens. Regardless of the situation you're in, whether you're open or closed, the worst thing to do is nothing. Wait and see is not going to help you out at all. So this is the time to hustle. What you want to do is you want to be out there making the phone calls. You want to be out there getting in front of people. You want to figure out what are some unique opportunities and how do you get them in front of the right people, because there are still opportunities out there. It's a question of, finding them and chasing them down, and also building up all of the things you need to have in place for ideally when, things start to reopen and return to some level of normalcy. So what I would love to leave you with is sort of that message of positivity, that this is the time to really take your marketing seriously and really, really dig in and get as much as you can done as positively as you can, because the more you're in front of people now, the better opportunities you'll have in the future, which is something, we're all thinking about and building toward. So with that, I think we'll open it up for questions, and I'm happy to stay and answer any questions that you have and any perspective and advice that I can offer you.
Krista, thanks a lot for sharing a lot of very important information with everyone today. As you mentioned, we're open for questions, so simply type your question in that question box on the upper right side of the screen, and we'll get started. Howard is wondering, should they offer wedding consultations via Zoom?
Yeah, why not? Of course. Zoom, by the way, Zoom is probably, if you're thinking of doing virtual stuff, Zoom is probably the easiest thing that you can do for one-on-one conversations. If you want to post videos with lots of people, Facebook Live is really easy, but also Zoom is fine. What I would do is definitely do wedding consultations through Zoom. The other thing, and I actually think I presented this to FTD years ago, is Pinterest. So with Pinterest, you can create private boards, so like only you and the client could see them, for example. So you could have brainstorming boards that you're doing through Pinterest as well, where you're both sharing inspiration. So you could share, images of other things you've done, and they can share things that match their look and feel. Absolutely, and Zoom is a great way to do that. So 100% great idea.
Awesome. Anna's question, how would you handle communicating supply chain disruption issues?
Yeah, so, here's what I would say is that I think in general, when it's your business, you're really caught up in all the details. Your clients may or may not be. So if I think of myself, when I go shopping for flowers, I'm like, do these look nice? And that's like literally my knowledge of flowers. And what goes into my decision making. You probably have clients though that are like, I want X, Y, and Z, and maybe these are things that can't get there. Think about your audience and think about what you really need to communicate to them, because if your audience is, let's say, meeting and event planners, right? Meeting and event planners probably fall more into that second category. They know specifically what they want, and they'll be, concerned if it's going to be different. Now, they probably don't have events right now anyways, but average consumers, I would, you would know better, but I wonder how deliberate they are. My suggestion would be, don't create issues that aren't on most people's minds. So if most of your type of customers are thinking about not being able to get the types of flowers they specifically want, sure. If you can still create beautiful arrangements with what you have, I wouldn't go down that rabbit hole unless there's a way to kind of make it a positive spin. Because I think, it's like a lot of restaurants have reduced menus, but they don't go into detail of why and what happened, et cetera. They're like, yeah, we just have a reduced menu right now for takeout. So I would avoid getting too far into the details, because I think there's more downside than upside, and you're alerting people to something that's a problem that they maybe don't have. But I would kind of not go down that rabbit hole unless you need to. Now, I think where you'll really have to ask this question seriously is when events are coming back, where you do have these people who are incredibly specific about what they want, and you may or may not be able to meet that demand immediately. That's when I would look to more have that conversation. But even then, I would probably do it more one-to-one, versus using that as a message track, because I think it's a bit of a derailment unless you could come up with a really good spin on it that makes it sound more positive and proactive.
Great, thanks. Pasquale has two questions. He wants to know, should they offer discounts or specials right now? And then also, is there too many posts in a day?
So I know with every type of small business, and specifically with florists, the idea of discounting and incentives is a hot topic. Some people are really against it. Some people use it as a staple of their business. You know, my attitude with my own business right now is let's try things that we didn't do before and see how they do, because what better time to try something new than now? And discounts, the reason people do them is like, you know, they work in getting people to take action. And oftentimes the reason we don't like to discount is because of the long-term impact. But you know, things are so crazy right now. I think this is a great time to test things like that and try and see if you can move that needle. So, you know, free delivery would be an obvious one, but you obviously need to manage your return on investment, right? If I'm offering it, what does that cost me? And am I still going to be profit positive? But coupons and incentives are always great. What I would consider if you're doing incentives is rather than reduced price, look at upsell, bonus box of chocolates, bonus this, bonus that. So look for add-ons to keep your price point the same, and then you can choose things that are high perceived value to the audience but low cost to you. Throw in a roll of toilet paper, for example. Don't really do that, but but like high perceived value to the audience, but low cost to you. And then that might be another way to think about it. So I would say get creative, try new things, because what better time? The risk is relatively low. Your whole business is a little ajar right now, so it's just less risky to try that. The second question about how many posts is too many posts depends a little bit on the channel. If I think about Facebook, you know, once a day is usually sufficient, maybe twice a day. Instagram, you can post, you know, I would say anywhere from 1 to 3 times a day. The minimum on both of those would be about once a week, I would say, is what you're aiming for. On Twitter, you can post as many times as you want. It's a little bit more quickly moving. So those would be your general guidelines. But the truth of the matter is if you're not boosting your posts with paid, the most important thing in the algorithm is that people are interested in your content. So on all social networks, how good your next post does depends on how people reacted to your last posts. So quality over quantity, I would say, you know, you don't want to post more than a couple times a day unless you have really great stuff that people are responding well to, because if you just start posting a bunch of stuff that no one responds to, it hurts your overall visibility. So quality over quantity, and then I gave you sort of those general guidelines that that you can use as well.
All right. He had a few kind of clarifying too. He said they're closed, but they're offering no contact deliveries and curbside pickups. They've offered gift baskets of lavender room strays, candles, children's books with coordinating stuffed animals. They just didn't want to seem desperate or greedy by all the posts.
Well, I mean, use your website, right? But I think the thing is, I mean, look, I don't think small businesses come across as desperate and greedy. I think the attitude by most people is like, how can we help these small businesses stay afloat? That's the sentiment I hear and see, at least. So I wouldn't worry so much about that. But what I would really focus on is, rather than just like, hey, we have this, we have this, we have this, turn it into storytelling. Take a little bit more time to create a great image, right? It's like, oh, you know, it meant the world to us that we, you know, added a children's story because, you know, so-and-so mom told us that it just made her son's day that he got a present also. And we're trying to occupy him. This couldn't have come at a better time. Or, I mean, you can tell a nicer story than what I am off the top of my head. But I think so one, awesome for you coming up with all these angles. Super, super smart. That's exactly what you want to be doing now. But think about telling the story behind it, and you're better off with like fewer things that a lot of people see than a bunch of things that no one cares about. So it's not the quantity, it's really just making sure you're telling the story in an impactful way is what I would really focus on and take the time to do that well.
Great. Pamela is asking what your advice is to those of us that cannot deliver because of total shutdown by the governor. She said, we are non-essential.
Yeah, you're limited, right? Use this time. So the only reasonable thing to do is, I think, do the things that you can do within your control. So I would still think about that, building that top of mind awareness. So it could be that you're continuing to post stuff about, you can, even though you can't deliver them to people could get them from a grocery store or something. So you could still post about positivity of flowers. You could also, though, think about building general awareness for your brand and what you do, right? So it could be like, hey, during the shutdown, we're thinking of different arrangements. What colors do you most want to see? And maybe you're experimenting with different things and you can share them or ask people to vote on them. So what I would consider is look for ways to just keep people engaged and continuing to see your content. And then you're building that awareness for when it reopens. The other thing you can think about, though, is getting ahead of yourself on some of the things that you just don't have time to do or don't have time to do really well in the day-to-day. So again, recording some of those videos, getting stuff scheduled out. It's a little hard to know when to start scheduling, though. But start thinking about it in that context. So I would still think about what is it that you are doing now and can do now that people would find interesting. So you're still building that top of mind awareness and showing the passion and love that you have for what you do. So they're really excited to support you as soon as they can. It's just a hard situation.
Great. Claudia said, what if they get negative feedback for staying open?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, that is a risk. I think what I would suggest is, like, the one thing about social media is there's people just looking for a fight, and the worst thing you can do is give it to them. So I would just shut it down real quick and say we're following the CDC guidelines that apply to businesses like ours, including grocery delivery, restaurant delivery, etc. Or, I don't know if that's true, right? Make sure it's actually true. But, like, I would just try and diffuse it, point to government guidelines. You're following the guidelines. I wouldn't go into a rabbit hole around it. Every restaurant is in the same position, but arguably so would every grocery store be. Like, restaurants are literally not essential, right? You can go to a grocery store, but a lot of them are open and doing delivery because they know people want it. So I would, and so there are other people though who are like, why would you order from a restaurant? They could be coughing all over your food. So I would just try and get away from the conversation as quickly as possible, point to the guidelines, have something. I think it's a great opportunity. Have a page on your website that speaks in plain English of, like, here's what the guidelines are. Here's what we're doing. You can include pictures of, like, you doing a bouquet with, like, gloves and a mask on or something. And that way those people have somewhere to go and it shows that you care and they're heard. But I would just kind of shut it down by going back to, here's the guidelines and we're 100% following them. Because, look, you're a human as well. You're also concerned about the safety of your family. And I think showing that human side also helps people to, like, gain a little bit of perspective when they're being aggressive.
Great. Anna said, do you have any tips for how to post about sympathy gifts in a tasteful way?
Geez, that's a tricky one. It depends on the type of sympathy gift that you are thinking about. But I would still always go back to tasteful storytelling, right? So try to take images of the products in context. What you'll notice in a lot of the images that I showed you that I found on social media, it's like the person in her home with flowers. So the thing about showing a picture of someone in their house with flowers is that picture is already telling the story of where the flowers are. And she's smiling. You already know she's happy because flowers are in her house. So try and get pictures that tell 1,000 words, right? Try the bouquet on the doorstep, right? That says more than just a standard stock photo with, like, P.S. we're open. So try to use images in context, even in that setting, right? And then I would just, kind of think of tasteful ways to tell the story behind it. I think storytelling is a great opportunity. So like, you know, presumably you have flowers available for funerals, and it's not like funeral flowers, 20% off, get them now, because that feels like inappropriate to most people. But there's ways you're marketing those as well, right? So generally, I think storytelling, showing them in context where the pictures may be doing the heavy lifting, but I would be really careful of appearing to be milking a situation, because that's where people really tend to get a little bit bent out of shape. So as long as you don't look like, funeral flowers, 20% off, um, then I think it can be done tastefully, but it's about the storytelling, right? How much did it mean to me to be able to send something when I couldn't be there? And that's the story to tell. And I think that's a relatable story. It doesn't feel like this money grub, like, so that's what I would really try and do. Just tell the stories tastefully, and also let people read between the lines a little bit. So like if you showed, like again, I don't know what kind of sympathy you're thinking about. I'm just going to say funeral because it's easy for me to think about. But if, again, we have funeral flowers seems like, I don't know, yeah, like maybe not so nice at this time. But, you know, even though I couldn't, a quote that says, even though I couldn't be there, I was able to, send something, or you can position it better. And then you just show the picture of the flowers in context. I think that does it for you. So that's the kind of approach I would look to take.
Great. Thank you, Krista. It looks like we are out of questions for today. We just want to thank everyone for attending the webinar. If you missed a portion of it, you want to watch it again, a replay will be available on the FTD Mercury Network Florist YouTube channel later today. We'll be sending you a very brief survey to gather your feedback, so please just take a minute to complete the survey, help us improve future webinars. We just want to thank you again, Krista, for showing us how to make strategic and relevant posts as well as marketing strategies to help us connect with our consumers as we navigate these uncharted waters. This concludes FTD's webinar, Social Media and Your Digital Presence in a Crisis. Thank you, everyone, and be safe out there.